We're very excited and grateful to have a beloved Sufi teacher, James Abdu'Rahim Keeley, with us today. Abdu'Rahim, known affectionately as AR, is a gifted Sufi teacher and healer. He's the founder of Live Root, a transformational program and healing processes that bring together spiritual wisdom and practical applications for living a life of joy and fulfillment. AR is a partner with LionHeart Consulting and was a faculty member of the University of Spiritual Healing and Sufism in California for 10 years. It was there that I met him for the first time. He was my third-year teacher, and I think it's fair to say that AR was one of the most sought-after teachers on the faculty because of his accessibility, his humor, and his ability to translate spiritual teachings into understandable and relatable terms. We are indeed fortunate to have AR with us today. His topic is Know Yourself to Know Your Lord. AR, welcome, and thank you for being with us today.
You're welcome.
Thank you so much. I'm so grateful to be with everyone today. Let's begin with the Fatiha and an invocation, and we'll get underway. Allahu Akbar. A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim. Bismillahir rahmanir rahim. Alhamdulillahi rabbil alameen. Ar-Rahmanir Rahim. Maliki yawmiddin. Iyyaka na'budu wa iyyaka nasta'in. Ihdina siratal mustaqim. Siratal ladina an'amta alayhim. Ghayril maghdubi alayhim waladdallin. Ameen. Oh Allah, we turn our entire selves to you and we ask for your guidance and blessing. We ask that you bless this gathering of hearts and that the fruit of our coming together is the beautiful words and kind deeds that beautify this world and lessen the burden of those in it. Please help us to live your way and to walk your path so that our heart becomes full of the fragrance of your love. And as we pass, all that we pass are reminded of you and directed to you and come to think highly of your care and your mercy so that they seek you in all of their actions and deeds. And together as one heart, we can beautify this world. Amen. All right, well, this is my first video teaching, so I will do my best not to watch myself. I was teasing Pat earlier that it's a little bit like giving a lecture in the mirror. So at least I have my smiling face as a participant looking back at me. Today, I want to talk to you about a lot of practical Sufism. You know, I'm someone who's been on the Sufi path now since 1997, and I'm going on 20 years. And for me, as a convert to Sufism and a convert to Islam, Sufism has always been a really practical endeavor for me. I wasn't born into the culture. I chose this because I was a seeker as a young man. And what I found out pretty quickly as I exposed myself to Sufism and Islam and the teachings of Sheikh Muhammad al-Jamal was that the more that I learned, the better human being I became. The more that I studied Sufism, the better person I became, the better son I became, the better father I was able to be, the better husband I was able to be. And my entire career with Sufism has really paralleled the study of spiritual healing and helping people through their health issues and the relationship issues. So for me, I've always had to study Sufism with a real practical eye and ask myself, yeah, I understand this teaching, but how does that add up at the end of the day? How's that going to help the people that I've been blessed to care for? And how's that going to help me in my own life? And when I started studying Sufism very early on, I remember learning that the purpose, we'll start with the purpose of life, but the purpose of life, the meaning of life is to know Allah and to leave the world better than we found it. These are two very beautiful purposes. And I found that when we attempt to leave the world better than we found it and we use our life in service of that, that's really the best way to get to know Allah. I was saying to a class a little while ago that when you work side by side with someone, you really get to know them. If you've spent a summer with someone, I'm thinking it's summer now and I'm watching my son, he's going out to for football for the first time this year. And he's working alongside his buddies and he's forming these bonds. But when you work with someone, you get to know them the most deeply. And we say in Sufism, no one can achieve the state of balance on their own. It's a gift. It's a gift of grace. So when we're seeking to leave the world better than we found it, we're not going to accomplish this on our own. We really need to work in partnership with spirit. And when we make partnership with Allah, when we say, I'm going to answer this call, I'm here with a purpose, with a reason. I have a song to sing, and I'm going to sing that song, and for the intention of leaving the world better than I found it. Well, we know as soon as we try and change something in our lives, it's not long until we're pretty quickly out of our depth, and we really need help. And Sufism is really a path of combining effort and grace. We want to work in partnership with the divine to beautify the world and leave it better than we found it. We started this meeting today with the Fatiha, and it starts Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. And Rahman and Rahim are both from the same root, with Rahma, which means womb, the womb of the mother that gives the child, the infant, everything it needs. And Rahman and Rahim, a few years ago, I understood that Rahman is the mercy that shines on everyone. You know, I'm given existence. I have breath. I have life today. Everyone on this call has breath and life today. And this gift of existence is, for me, I always think of this as Allah's way of saying that I'm still sanctioned on the earth. I woke up this morning. I have existence, so He still wants me to be here. He's still supporting me to be here with life. And I love to say that, you know, the divine looked down on the earth and said, this earth that I have down here, it's not going to be complete unless I put a Pat on the earth, or a Linda, or a James, or whomever else is on the call tonight, and saying that you were put here with a purpose, with a song to sing. Now that's the Rahman. It gives us existence. But the Rahim is the quality of the divine that responds when we have a problem with that existence that we can't solve on our own. You know, Rahim is the one who responds to our cries when we're trying to beautify the world, when we're trying to leave our lives better than we found them, when we're trying to sing our song, and we can't. We come up against something that we can't overcome on our own. And I'm sure everyone on this call has been somewhere in their life where they're struggling with something that they weren't able to overcome, and prayed and asked for help, or sought guidance, and was reached by that quality of Rahim that helped you get somewhere that you couldn't get on your own. And every time this happens, every time we seek and we ask for help and we're supported by the divine, we fall a little bit more in love with the divine, because there's no one we love more than the one who helps us accomplish what matters to us. I was saying the other day that, you know, it's easy for me to say to my wife, I love you, or to give her flowers, or to tell her she looks beautiful. But if I really want to show her that I love her, then I need to take time and understand what's important to her, what her victories are, and invest my efforts and energies in seeing that those come about in the world. She knows I love her when I support her in what matters to her. Well, it's the same way when the divine supports us in what matters to us, supports us in beautifying the world, then we feel that love most directly, and we become affectionate. You know, in Sufism, we say, he who seeks will find, and whoever finds will know, and whoever knows will come to love. And whoever comes to love will come to be madly in love. And when it says madly in love, it says we want to give everything to the divine. And for whomever gives everything to the divine gives everything to them. And this is all predicated on this seeking, this conscious effort, this willingness to reach out and say, I'm seeking you. I'm looking for you in my life. I'm asking for your support. I'm allying myself with you. I'm not attempting to achieve these things on my own, but to really do them in partnership with your support. Everyone has heard that the divine finds us at the end of our rope. When we're swinging at the end of our rope, that's when we get caught. So this intention to make the world a better place, to leave it better than we found it, is really central to Sufism. You know, we're Shadaliya Sufis. And Hassan Shadali, he was the student of Ibn Mashish, Abdu'Rahim ibn Mashish. And Abdu'Rahim ibn Mashish lived up on the mountain. And when Shadali took his teachings from him and learned his way, he came back into the world. And he had the tradition of not taking a student unless they had a job, unless they had a profession. Because this, for the Shadaliya Sufis, this leaving the world better than we found it is central to our path. And it's where we come up against the things that get us out of our depth, that force us to reach out to the divine and seek that aid. You know, there's nothing that makes us become aware of our own weakness, like trying to make a change in the world and feeling how impossible that can seem on our own. And as we know in Sufism, in our weakness, we get to know the divine strength. And if I come up against something, I say, I don't know how to do this, and I get stuck in my ignorance, this is when I am available or make myself ready for divine knowledge. So when we're living our lives, we want to intend to leave the world better than we found it, to make a beautiful impact, to leave every conversation with a gift for the person we were talking with, or to leave a room better than the way we entered it. And this intention puts us on the path, puts us in alignment with our purpose. We say that the divine hidden treasure that love to be known, that love to be known. And so because the divine loved to be known, not wanted to be known or needed to be known or had to be known, but loved to be known, he created all the creation to know him. So this tells us that the impetus for creation was love. It wasn't need, it wasn't desire, it wasn't want, it was love. The divine literally enjoys creation. So he created all the creation to know him. And this tells us that when we're looking to create something in our own lives, and we want to align ourselves with that original force of creation, we need to create things that we can love. And be able to ask ourselves, do I love my life? Do I love the life I'm living? Do I love the neighborhood that I'm living in? Do I love the environment that I'm living in? If you're like me, you wear a lot of different hats. I'm a teacher, I'm a father, I'm a son, I'm a neighbor, I'm a citizen, a husband, all the hats that I wear. And in different areas of my life, sometimes I'll be very content with one, and sometimes I'll be very upset about another. I remember years ago, one of my first experiences in Sufism, one of my teachers told me that whatever upsets you, you're responsible for. And I remember thinking, man, that is a humongous requirement, that if something upsets me, I'm responsible to do something about it. And when we look into our lives and we say, well, I want to create a life that I love. I want to create a relationship with my children that I love. I want to create a relationship with my family that I love. I want to create a work situation that I love. I want to create a role as a citizen that I love. I want to create all these things and ask ourselves, can I love it? Do I feel in love with the life that I'm creating? Am I in harmony with that original desire or force for creation? And if I can't love it, well, why not? Rumi has a beautiful line. He says, the rule of pain is to complain. And I even love it even more because it rhymes. The rule of pain is to complain. So if we can't be happy about some area of our lives, we really want to allow our heart to complain, to say, this is why, this is what's stopping me from being able to be happy in this area of my life. Now, a lot of people think of this complaining as fault finding. You know, they don't want to be fault finding. But I like to think of it more as shackle finding. Because as human beings, we have two things inside of us. We have a body and a spirit. And these two forces come together to create ourselves. And it's the spirit inside of us that longs to manifest its capacity, its song, its gift. So when the spirit looks out in the world and there's something in its life that's not allowing it to sing its song, it takes issue with it. It's either frustrated about it or disappointed about it or worried about it. And this complaining allows the spirit to say, hey, I want to sing my song, but when this is going on, that doesn't allow it. This situation in my life, the way it's arranged right now, I can't make manifest what I'm here to make manifest. Now, these emotions of upset, which are anger and sadness and fear, there's chronic anger, sadness, and fear, and then there's resolved anger, sadness, and fear. And when we're angry about something in our lives, essentially what we're saying is, that's not the right thing. Anger says, that shouldn't be here. That's the wrong thing. Like, if there's going to be harmony and peace and goodness and joy and happiness and balance, that can't be present. That shouldn't be here. That's not in harmony with the thing that should be here. Now, sadness says, what should be here is missing. If we don't have what we need in this circumstance of our life, or my children don't have what they need, or my wife doesn't have what they need, or my neighborhood doesn't have what it needs for the beautiful qualities of light and love and peace and mercy and justice and freedom to exist, it's missing. So the heart is sad. It looks for it, but can't see it. And fear says, looks out in our lives and says, oh my gosh, if things keep going the way they're going, there's going to be a disaster, right? So one of the things we're learning when we're complaining is to not just complain about what is happening, but to allow our hearts to begin to complain about what's not happening. Anger resolves when it says, you know, that shouldn't be here. And the reason I don't like that is because my heart is actually longing for something else, or something else that belongs here. And I'll often use the example that unresolved anger says, no war, there shouldn't be war, stop fighting. And resolved anger says peace, and it stands for peace, and it stands for wholeness, and it stands for justice, and it stands for those things. It knows what it stands for. And sadness says, yes, these things aren't here, so we need to find them. We need to seek them. We need to look and see how we can bring those in. Or maybe I lost something, but that thing that was lost played a very important role, and we need to find something to fill it. And that one of my good friend and a member in the Sufi community, David Wilcox, he has this beautiful song that says, that's what the lonely is for. When we feel that lonely sadness in our heart, that's that empty part of ourselves that's seeking that peace that's going to fit just perfectly in there. And if I'm afraid of something in my life, I'm afraid because when my heart and my spirit look out in the world, it says, if this continues going on the way it's going on, things are going to be lost, things are going to be hurt, things are going to be damaged, things are going to be threatened. So I'm afraid of that. Why? What am I longing for? What's the safety that my heart seeks? So if I'm angry about something, why doesn't that fit? What am I longing for? What does belong there? And if I'm sad about something, well, what's missing? And what is that thing? What would fill that gap? What am I longing for? And then if I'm afraid, well, if this is what's scary, what would safety look like? What would that safe shore really look like? And allowing our hearts not just to complain about what's happening, but to complain about what's not happening. Now, C.D. writes in his book about patience, he says, be careful that you don't believe patience is the same as bearing trials on your own. He says real patience means that when you complain only to Allah, because Allah is the one who can do anything about what's going on in the world. But in Sufism, the reason we're here, we want to have a profession in the world, is when we look out in the world and we say, that shouldn't be there. I want to be happy about my life. I don't want to go around making trouble, but I can't rest because there's something going on in my life or in my community or with my family that's out of place. And that upsets me, not because of what's here, but because of what's not here, right? And thinking about, well, why does that bother me? What am I really longing for in my life? What is my heart or my spirit calling me to bring forth? And once we do this, we create a map. We create a map of, this is what we have, but this is what we long for, right? I'm upset about this because of what I have, but the reason I'm really upset is not because of what I have, but because of what's missing or because of what I don't have. Now we've created a map. I'm here and I don't have this, and I long for that. So we can ask ourselves, if I was going to take responsibility for this, if I was going to go from not having it to having it, or having the wrong thing to having the right thing, what would I need to accomplish? How would I need to direct my efforts and energies? The divine Allah has seen fit to give me existence today, right? I must still be necessary. I must still have a role to play. I'm still breathing. So if I am here, so how am I going to use this gift? How am I going to direct these efforts and energies? What's my goal going to be, right? And this is where we're taking responsibility for these things and being responsible for what upsets us. So if I'm upset in my life and I say, well, that shouldn't be here, and the reason I'm upset about that is because this should. All right, well, if I'm going to get that in my life, what would I have to do? What would I have to accomplish? And this is where it gets a little scary, because we know in our hearts that we can't really accomplish anything on our own. And one of the beautiful things that Sufism teaches us is that we're not responsible for results. We're responsible for our efforts and our energies and the intentions behind those. We'll never be responsible. We'll never be in control of results. There's so many things that are outside of our control. And it gets back to the old story about trusting Allah and tying your camel. You know, there's things inside of our control. You have to tie your camel. You can't just say, well, if they're supposed to have a camel, it'll be there in the morning. You've got to take care of what's into your power. But there's so many things outside of our power that we have to trust to the divine. And anytime we say, I'm unhappy about something in my life, and the reason I'm unhappy about it is not because of what's happening, because of what's not happening. And if I'm going to go from what I have to what I long for, I'm going to have to engage my efforts. I'm going to have to take actions. I'm going to have to use this gift of life that divine gave me on the beautification of my world. Wow. Well, man, if I'm going to succeed, I'm going to need some help. Because anytime that we're actually upset about something going on in our lives, it's because we feel as if we don't have what it takes to make that change, to change us from what we have to what we long for, to change the circumstances in the world that upset us to the ones that would bring us peace and give us that sense of alignment and being in the right place. So when we go to make these efforts, we say, if I'm going to go from here to there, this is what I'm going to have to accomplish. We're going to need to ask the divine to help us. And like I said earlier, this is where we enter into that partnership with the divine, where we say, I was talking to a friend of mine the other day, and he was telling me that he's been trying to help some of his family members. And I said, well, great. That's so beautiful. You've been sharing the things you've learned. He said, yeah, but I'm not happy. I said, well, why not? He said, well, I tell them the things to do. I talk to them later. They don't do them. And then they slide back further. And every time I talk to them, it seems like they're a little worse off. And I said, so sounds like you're really upset because they're not following through on your advice. He said, yeah. I said, well, what are you longing for? Why does that bother you? He says, because what I want to see is I give them advice and they take it and they really fly. I said, all right, well, if you're going to go from I give them advice and they don't do anything with it to what I'm really longing for is I give them advice and they take off and they fly, what are you going to have to do? He said, well, I guess what I'm going to have to do is I'm going to have to hold them accountable. I'm going to have to hold their hand. I'm going to have to walk beside them. I'm going to have to make sure they follow through, give them additional support. Now he's taking his efforts and energy and using them to bring about the world or the future that he really longs to see. Now, all of a sudden, he gets himself into some pretty dicey territory because if he's going to hold their hand, well, they need to hold the other side of his hand. If he's going to be accountable, they're going to have to be willing to show up. There's going to be things outside of his control. When they use his advice, they're going to have those initial successes that give them the encouragement to keep going. All these things. So every time in my life and in other people's lives, when we make this place and we realize, I have complained. The rule of pain is to complain while I am in pain because I'm missing something. And a life like this isn't what I'm longing for. I'm longing for this. My spirit's calling me to this. It's that part of myself that says, this could be. All right, well, if this could be, one of the active ingredients is me. I'm going to use my efforts and energies and put it towards that goal. Now, every time I do this, I always feel like I just wrote a check that I don't have enough cash in my bank account to cover. And if you've ever written a check and you're not sure if you have enough money in the account, you know what a nervous feeling that is. So when we intend to change our lives, we put ourselves out and say, I'm going to move from this to that and use my efforts and energies to make that change. We can become very anxious because we know that results are not in our control. So here's where we want to ask the divine for help and say, I'm unhappy and I'm because of this in my life, but the real reason I'm unhappy is because I'm longing for that. So if I'm going to go from what I have to what I long for, I'm going to have to accomplish this goal. And I'm going to accomplish this goal. I'm going to put my heart and soul into it. And will you help me? And really allowing that place where we often say nothing pleads on our behalf with the divine, like sincerity. And nothing lends itself to sincerity like knowing that you're in trouble. So when you make these intentions to make a change in your life, and we don't have control of the outcomes and results, now we just put ourselves out on that limb. And we're saying, God, will you help me? Allah, will you help me achieve this goal? Will you be my partner in this? And just this question of, will you help me achieve this goal can make such a difference. Because there's three ways that we lose heart when we have something in our lives. I'm frustrated about this thing in my life. And my friend, for instance, he's like, I'm just frustrated. I share with them the advice that they need. They don't do anything with it. They get worse off. I really want to see them fly. I'm not sure how to get them from here to there. Well, if I'm going to, what I'm going to have to do is hold them accountable. I'm going to have to hold their hand. but I'm not sure that's going to work. So when I ask the divine, will you help me? All of a sudden, what we do is we change the teams, and we go from me versus my circumstances to me and the divine versus my circumstances. And this sense of having this ally of the divine when we're looking to accomplish goals helps us to feel as if it's either possible, there's a way, and we can do it. Because these are the three reasons that we hold off. When we're unhappy in some area of our lives or unhappy with something that's going on in our lives, we tend to hold back our efforts and energies. We tend to hold back our work to beautify the world because we think, oh, it's not possible. Look at how entrenched this situation is. Or there's no way. I mean, I just don't have the resources. I don't have enough people. I don't have enough support. I don't see any way to get from where we are to where we want to be. Or I want to make this change, but man, it seems so hard. Like, I'm not sure I'm up for it. I'm not sure I'm smart enough or strong enough or capable enough to make this kind of change. And it can be really intimidating because it's just us against the world. And what we're wanting to do is say, I am going to try this. You gave me existence. I'm going to use it in service of beautification. But if I'm going to succeed, I'm going to need your help. Will you help me? Will you be my ally in this? And then closing our eyes and feeling ourselves out on the edge of our limb, where that place where we've asked for help, to feel that response in our soul, to feel that sense of yes. And one of the ways we can do this in the most powerful way is to really feel, what is it like for me to commit to this goal? Well, maybe it's like feeling like I'm out on the edge of a branch, like I've just gone at the end of my limb. Or maybe it's feel like I wrote a check that I'm not sure I have enough resources to cash. Maybe it feels like I just got in the deep end of the pool, or I'm in over my head. And saying, I want to accomplish this goal. And for me, intending this is scary. It's like being in over my head. Or it's worrisome because I'm not sure I'm going to have all the resources. It's like trying to build a rocket ship with not enough parts. How are you with me? And the reason it can be so helpful to enter into this world of metaphor is because spirit and form they come together in the middle of what we call the imaginal world, or the barzakh, the in-between space. And anytime we're looking to receive spiritual guidance, it's best if we create a form to receive it into. This is why if you listen to a story of, perhaps a story of Rabia, and she has this dream. And she goes, in this dream, she sees this tree. And on this tree are these beautiful flowers, beautiful golden orbs and flowers. And then there's a few on the ground. And she thinks to herself, this tree would be a lot more beautiful if all of the flowers and beautiful orbs were up on the tree. And she sees in this picture of the tree and the thing that the ones on the ground are her prayers where she was distracted. Now, this imagery of the tree, of the golden orbs and everything allows a form for a spirit which has no form, which is entirely formless, to convey its knowledge to us. So when we want to speak to the divine, or we want to commune with spirit, we want to create a form to receive that guidance into. So if I say that being with the divine is like floating on a cloud, now I'm not saying the divine is a cloud, but I can say that being with the divine is like floating on a cloud. It's soft, it's all around me, it carries me, it's gentle, it tells me things about what divine support is like through the imagery of a cloud. But the divine's certainly not a cloud. The divine can't be limited or even named. So when we're intending something in our lives and we say, I'm not happy about this, I'm frustrated about this, but the reason I'm really frustrated is because this doesn't belong, this does. But man, it's scary to put my heart and soul into making that change. Scary, like, putting myself out there, like exposing myself. Will you help me? And in that place where I feel exposed, now I can receive. And maybe I see that, yes, I'll be exposing myself, but I'm surrounded by that support. Maybe I feel that sense of support behind me. Because what we're wanting to do is to go from that sense of it's me versus my circumstances to it's me plus the divine versus my circumstances. And now we say, I may not know how it's going to happen, but I believe it will. I may not know exactly what it's going to look like, but with the divine support, I feel like it's possible. I may not know, I may not be strong enough, but I know with the divine support, I'm strong enough. That me plus the divine is strong enough to pull this off. So this working in harmony with the divine, or working in partnership with the divine to beautify the world, is where we have these intimate conversations. And when we're willing to say, I'm going to take that step, I'm going to not just sit back, but I'm giving advice and having people I care about not follow through with it. I could say, well, that's their business. Oh, well, I gave my advice. I told them what they needed to do. They didn't do it. That's on them. But, my spirit rebels against that. That's not the world I'm longing for. If I have a gift to give someone and it will truly lighten their load and beautify their lives, and they don't take it, well, then I want to help them to take it. I want to find out what's the next thing I need to do to support them to receive that advice. I want to get more involved. Right? And I'm going to use that doesn't guarantee me, results, but now I've placed myself into the game. And unfortunately, a lot of us, we tend to pray without effort. And there's an old saying that a prayer without effort is a wish. Right? And if you're like me, you probably said, oh man, I really wish they would listen to me. I wish they'd take my advice. I wish they would follow through. I wish they would. Instead of saying they're not. And I really long for them to. Okay, so what would I need to do with my energy in order to contribute to that future? And I'm going to do that. Now, all of a sudden, instead of just praying or wishing, I put my effort into it. Now, the other end of this is to struggle without grace, where we say, well, I'm going to make this change, and by God, I'm just going to make this change. I'm going to put all my efforts and energy. I'm going to try. But we're taking responsibility for results. So when things don't go well, we take it especially hard because we're thinking, well, it's up to me. Instead of saying, I'm going to use the life you've given me. I'm going to use the gifts you've given me to contribute to the kind of world I want to live in. And I'm going to ask for you to bless those efforts. And I'm going to ask for you to help me. I'm going to ask for you to guide me and to give me resources and allies and the support that I need. But I'm in the game. I'm there to meet you and reach you. And this place where we step into the game is where we find the divine. It's at that place of effort and grace. And right where we reach the end of our effort is where grace catches us. So when we don't reach the end of that effort, then we don't need anything more because we haven't expended what we've been given. And we say in Sufism that if you act on what you know, or you act with what you've been given, Allah will reach you with what you don't know or what you haven't yet received. So when we say, okay, I'm going to try. I'm going to use my efforts to do this. And then we encounter something that we don't know how to handle. Now we have a very specific desire or conversation to have with the divine about that, to be able to say, hey, I'm trying to change this. You said you were going to help me. Here's what I'm struggling with. Let me tell you what's going on. And be able to have this conversation with the divine where we're in partnership to beautify the world. And this is so wonderful because what happens is the heart and the spirit, it continues to find places of beautification. We say that there are 70,000 veils between you and the divine. And when the heart begins to get upset, it says, this is missing. This is not right. This doesn't belong. This is going in a way that's scary or dangerous. And says, I'm upset about that because there's something in my soul that tells me this belongs. Or there's something in my soul that when it's missing, longs to seek it and find it. Or there's something that tells me in my soul when things are headed in a bad direction to turn it, to make it go in a different direction, to intervene with my efforts and energies. And I'm going to listen to that soul. And as soon as we accomplish whatever that goal was, the heart and the soul are going to begin to look to the next place. It's going to say, what's that next veil? What's that next chain? That next, like I said, rather than fault finding, we're actually shackle finding. What's that next veil we want to remove? And the heart is always going to long for things that are just a little bit outside of our comfort zone, or sometimes a lot outside of our comfort zone. Because the chief desire of the spirit is to grow. It wants to manifest what it's capable of. And it grows by putting us in situations that are a little bit beyond our current abilities. Now, earlier I said we have the spirit and we have the body, and they create the self. And just like their spirit and the world creates the barzakh, or the imaginal world, our spirit and our body come together to create ourselves. And our body, I have children, and our bodies are basically everything that we eat and don't pass. I'm constantly recreating my body through the food that I eat. And my kids, I fed them and they grew. So our bodies are from the world, and they draw their well-being from the world. And the body's knowledge is stored in the nervous system. It looks at everything that's ever happened in the world, everything it's ever seen, and everything it's encountered. And it's constantly looking at these two things. Which choices have led me to pleasure, and which choices have led me to pain? Now, in Sufism, Ghazali talked about this, and he spoke about this as the lower nature has both the pig and the dog nature. And he talked about that we both have these lust and anger. And the lust and anger has to do with pleasure and pain. We lust after what brings us pleasure, and we get angry and want to repel that what hurts us. And everything in our lives, we're constantly recording, that led to pleasure, that led to pain. That led to pleasure, that led to pain. And we're watching the examples of the people around us. We're saying, well, I saw that person do that, and that succeeded. Or I saw that person do that, and that did not succeed. I learned very early, if I speak up, that I get yelled at. Okay, well, if I question someone, that I get ostracized. Well, I know that questioning is bad now. So I'm going to avoid that, and I'm going to steer myself towards these other actions. Now, unfortunately, what happens is the spirit says, I long for something that goes beyond what the nervous system has experienced, right? Something that takes us beyond where we know the paths between the pleasure and pain. We say, if we go down that road, we're going to have to risk pain. Or we've never been down a road like that. We don't know what goes on down there. Or we don't have a map for that. And the spirit says, that's precisely why I want to go there, because I want to bring forth new experiences and more of our unique song. So what happens is, as we go to make these changes in our lives, we say, I want to bring this thing that's missing. I want to change what doesn't belong into what does belong. I want to intervene so that the way this is headed doesn't end in catastrophe, but it ends in safety and beauty. I want to do that. But when I use my efforts and energies to do that, I encounter things that I don't have any answers for. I look at my past and I say, I don't know how to get through that. And for me, that's difficult. That's painful. That's like hitting a brick wall, or that's like being set back, or that's like being out of my depth. And it's in these places that we're saying, okay, Spirit, you called me into this. You asked me to make this change. So where do I go from here? Can you help me? Can you guide me? Can you support me? And this is where we're leaning on that other part of our nature, because we all have the spirit within us and we have the body within us. And I like to refer to this as two eyes. When we look at our lives, we see what the nervous system sees. It says, I don't know, I've never accomplished this before. Or last time I tried, this happened. So I see this circumstance as a dead end. Why isn't it? What am I missing? What am I not seeing? What am I forgetting? What can't I see here? Why did my spirit call me into this situation? What did it know that my nervous system didn't know? And we're making space in our awareness to be shown the way forward. Now, we say that that no one can understand the divine. No one can grasp the divine. No one can grasp the spirit. In Sufism, we often joke there's two mysteries that you'll never understand. The first is the divine. That one's pretty straightforward. But the other is yourself. And the reason that is because you have that spark of the divine in form of your spirit in yourself. You have the spark of the divine, the breath, the roux of the divine is in you. And because of that, even that small spark is beyond our ability to comprehend. But just because we can't comprehend it doesn't mean that it can't reveal itself to us. And that's why I always tell people that when we commune with the divine, it's not a process of deduction. It's a process of revelation. The divine's revealing itself to us. So this is where we get back to that first reason for living, or the first meaning of life, which is to know the divine. Well, how do we know the divine? Well, we know the divine through revelation. The divine reveals itself to us. And we're told to look for revelation in three places. The first is in the Quran. The second is in the universe or the world around us. And the third is in ourselves. And each of these three places, we're going to find things called ayats. And those ayats, what this literally means is signs. We're going to find indicators, things that indicate to us about the divine, lets us know about and reveals things to us about the divine. So when we're learning to read Quran, we learn to read Arabic, and we learn to read the various contexts and what happened and when was this verse revealed and what was going on, and really diving down into the root word. Why was this word chosen and not this word? When we look out in the world, we're looking at the meaning of events. We're looking at the way the mother bird cares for the baby bird. And we're seeing the rahmah in the world, the care. And when we're learning to read the signs of ourselves, we're learning to read the sign of our own spirit, to heed the call of that spirit that says, I want to be happy. I want to enjoy my time in this world. I want to create a life that I love, but I can't right now because of this thing. And unless I change that I'm not going to love it. And if I'm going to change it, I'm going to have to accomplish this. So I put my heart and soul and energy into accomplishing those things. And in this way, I align myself with that original impetus of love, that original push for creation. So we talk about doing spiritual practice. And years ago when I was learning guitar and I went to a friend, I said to him, man, you are an amazing guitar player. What do you practice? He said, I don't really practice scales or rhythms or anything like that. But when I have a sound inside of me that wants to come forth, I practice making that sound until it flows effortlessly from me. And I realized that, wow, I hadn't been practicing making music. I was practicing to get good enough so that I could someday make music. And when I made that little switch in my practice and said, you know what, from now on, I'm just going to practice making music. Instead of practicing it good enough, I'm going to practice making music. And I started to apply that to all my spiritual practice and said, you know what, if I'm going to have a spiritual practice, I should practice what I want to live. So one of the things that people are getting a lot of mileage out of, and really I've been a blessing in my own life, is practicing every day after Fajr, this allying myself with making the world a more beautiful place, of intending to create a life that I love every single day. Every single day, and it brings us into harmony with this rahmah. In the morning, we get up, we open our eyes, we say, sure enough, the divine has sanctioned my existence for one more day. I've been given breath, I've been given life. And if you're like me, you can pretty much, most of the time, you know what you're going to do in your day. Most of my days are pretty scripted. I know today I'm going to take the kids somewhere. I have some sessions to do. I'm going to be teaching. I'm going to be traveling. I'll be visiting my parents. Most of the time I know what's ahead of me on the day. And after Fajr, if you can take some time and think about the day that stretches out before you and say, how do I feel about the day that stretches out before me? Do I feel in love with it? Do I feel like the day that I've created for myself and the day that I'm going to be a part of, can I say that I love it? And if the answer is no, why not? Why can't I love it? What's my heart's beef or complaint about my life? And then take a moment and ask myself, well, why am I complaining about that? What am I really longing for instead? Right? Why is this bothering me? If I'm get up in the morning and I'm frustrated because, man, I have so many things to do and not enough time to do them, well, why does that bother me? What am I longing for? I'm longing to be really careful and conscious in each of my actions. Everything I do, I want to do with a great deal of care and excellence. And man, I can't do that when I have so many things to do and not enough time to do them. All right, well, if I'm going to actually achieve that today, what am I going to need to do? Well, I might have to get some help. I might have to change some deadlines on some things. I might have to actually look at which of these things are important and which of these things are tertiary or secondary importance. Wait a minute. Maybe some of the things that I'm doing aren't even my own responsibilities. Maybe these are the things that I'm responsible for, and these are the things that actually belong to somebody else. So if I'm going to actually achieve a life I love, in that day, I'm going to start with, well, can I love it? Yes. Or no, I can't. Well, why not? This is the reason. And then really clearly identify that reason and say, well, if I was going to love it, what would I have to create? Well, I have to create this. All right, well then what's the active ingredient? What am I going to have to do? And really become clear. If I'm going to love today, I'm going to have to turn this into that by accomplishing this goal. And I'm going to do that. And God, I'm going to ask you to bless me. I'm going to ask you to bless these efforts. I'm going to ask you to bless my endeavors and to be my ally today. And this idea of looking for allies is so important because we know the divine through the world and the universe. So when we ask the divine to help us, we want to go forth in our day looking for those allies. And I call this the divine in disguise. You know, looking for those people who show up in those perfect moments in our life who are going to support us with the things we need to achieve those goals. Sometimes I'll be out and I'll see the way the light glints off the water. And I always think of it, it's like a little wink from the divine that says, still here, still caring for you. And I see the beauty in the universe or the beauty in the world. And I think, my goodness, that beauty reminds me to go a little further or reach a little deeper. And one of the things that we can do that strengthen this so much is at the end of the day, actually create what I call an ally journal. And the way we do this is we start off in the day and say, I want to be happy with today. Can I be? Do I love today? I love most of today, but there's one thing I'm not crazy about. Why not? Let me complain in a positive way. Not what's wrong, but what's missing. Okay, well, if I'm going to accomplish that, what do I need to do? I'm going to do that. All right, the divine, I'm going to do this today. Will you help me? Will you be my support? All right, I feel that sense that you're going to be the wind in my sails. Okay, now this support didn't begin when I sat down. It's not going to end when I got up. It's going to show up in all these different forms today. And when we know at the end of the day, we're going to have to write down these allies, and you give yourself that assignment, I'm going to write down all the allies who showed up today to help me accomplish the goal of beautifying my life, of creating a life I love, and leaving the world better than I found it. You're going to look a little more carefully because you know you have to write it down at the end of the day. And the other thing that happens is when you write down those allies at the end of the day, you're reinforced to your nervous system that they're there and present and around you. And then you start to look for them a little more carefully. You start to look for them a little more carefully. And as you do this more and more, this idea of being carried and supported starts to become second nature, and you start to expect it. And when you expect it, you look for it all the more powerfully. So a really simple way to practice being in alignment with the divine or beautifying the world through knowing the divine is by starting every day and asking yourself, do I love the day that stretches out before me? If the answer is yes, I totally love the day. Everything, when I look at my day, I love everything about it. Everything that's going on, everything I'm going to be doing, it's just everything that I need is there. Everything that should be there is there. There's nothing that's going on in a way that's going to cause any problems. So I'm not frustrated. I'm not sad. I'm not worried. I'm truly happy. Well, then I can ask myself, if I'm going to be as happy at the end of the day as I am at the beginning of the day, what would I need to accomplish? That's going to be my goal for the day. Okay, Allah, this is what my efforts and energies are working towards, beautifying the life that you've given me, making the world more beautiful than I found it. Will you support me in this? Close my eyes for a moment and feel that yes. Feel that yes rise up inside my heart, or feel it come into my experience. And once I receive that yes, to realize that that support is going to show up in the form of allies, the divine in disguise, and keep my eye out for those allies, go all throughout the day, and then record them at the end of the day and close that loop. So this idea of when I have the courage to not just complain about my life, but to complain about my life in such a way that gives me direction. The rule of pain, as Rumi says, is to complain, but to complain in a way that gives me direction, and then use my efforts and energies, the gifts that the divine's given me, in service to those goals, in service to those longings, and ask the divine to support me in that. I start to see that help. I say, my goodness, what kind of Lord supports me in my goals? And I begin to become even more fond of that Lord. And as I become more fond of the divine, I begin to say, wow, if the divine will help me in this, maybe it'll help me on that too. Maybe it'll help me accomplish this goal. And I begin to become more audacious in the things that I'm willing to take on. Because I tried this one and I got support. Allies showed up. Wow, what else could I do? And I began to become more and more eager to share with the divine, because when I saw, I found. And if I found, well, what I found, I loved. And what I loved, I began to become a little crazy about that love. I began to fall in love with the divine and say, wow, when I open my heart and accept the signs he's given me and really accept this spirit and take responsibility for the things I'm upset about, and not just wish they were different, but actually put myself out there and effort towards them, releasing all results to the divine, saying, I'm going to try, will you help me? And then looking for those allies, expecting support. And if you think about all the prophet stories, everything, all the stories, they'd all reach a point in their lives where they reached the end of their rope. And they would pray and they would reach out, and then something would come to them. There's the story of Moses, who is outside the well, and he's so incredibly hungry. He's sitting down, and he's looking at all the people watering their flocks. And he's so hungry, he's been eating grass. And his stomach is all tight and uncomfortable. And he turns to the divine and says, "Oh Allah, I'm needful for what you have for me." He says, help, basically. Not help me, not send me food, not send me this, but I'm needful for what you have for me. Will you help me? And he asked for this help. And sure enough, what shows up isn't, food on a platter. It's not a train of angels carrying food. What comes is he looks down and he sees, oh, there's some people who need help. And I'm going to go out and actually use the gifts that Allah's given me, and I'm going to help those people. And by helping them and putting his efforts and energies into that, they say, wow, thanks so much. Would you like to come home with us? And sure enough, he gets a position and provision and ultimately wives, which leads him on to his journey and his mission. So when we're looking for allies in the world and we begin to accustom ourselves, we move from this idea of Allah in the sky who's separate from us and somehow removed from our lives, to the Allah that shows up in the faces of our friends, who shows up in the faces of our coworkers, who shows up in the light that shines off of the water. And we begin to have this relationship with the divine that's very connected to what's going on around us, and in harmony or in service with the things that really matter to our hearts. So this daily practice can be so beautiful to end your Fajr prayer with. Just take a moment and think about the day. Do I love it? Can I love it? As I walk through my day, well, I'm doing this and this. And if there's something in your day you're not going to love, you're going to feel your body react. It's going to get tense. Well, if it's tense, that's because it's frustrated. It's going to shake. It's going to feel anxious. If it's anxious, that's because it's worried. It'll feel heavy. If it feels heavy, that's because it's sad. It feels like there's something missing. And to realize that these feelings, they matter. They mean something to us. If we're upset, we're responsible. So what are we longing for? What are we going to put our efforts and energies into? And lastly, to remember that Allah, he tells us that I don't judge you on results. He says, I don't look and say, what did you accomplish? He says, what did you try to accomplish? What was your intention? Why did you do the things you did? What were you intending with these actions? Well, I gave advice to some of my friends and they didn't take it. And that made me unhappy because I wanted them to fly with the advice that I gave them, to really get the help that would let them change their lives. So I decided that I was going to help hold them accountable. And the reason I did is because I wanted to see good for them. I wanted to see them take off. That was my intention. That's what I tried. Now, whether I succeeded or whether I didn't just stand by, I used what you gave me in service for that. The divine says, that's a beautiful deed. And this is what we're judged on. What did we do with what we were given? So when we have the courage to actually complain and to look at our lives and ask ourselves the very, very difficult question, can I love it? Can I love the day that stretches out before me? Can I love the life I'm living? And if the answer is no, why not? What makes us say no? And then turn that no into a positive complaint, which says, why can't you love it? What are you longing for instead? What is your heart really calling you to? And identifying that clearly and saying, okay, well, if that's what I'm longing for, what would I have to do with this gift of existence and effort and intelligence and wisdom that I've been given today to see that to contribute to that becoming a reality. All right, I'm going to do it. Will you help? Let's go. And forming that partnership with the divine. And we start to walk hand in hand with the divine in our lives. And it's with as each ally shows up, it's like that wink or that kiss. And we begin to reinforce to ourselves that support is here. And the more that we feel supported, the more willing we are to go against those places in our nervous system that says, if you speak up, you get in trouble. If you go different from the way other people go, you'll be ostracized. If you do this thing or that thing, you might get hurt. You might be rejected, because that's what's happened. We've done these things before. I'd say, I know, and that's risky and it scares me, but I'm not doing this on my own. And the results aren't in my hands. I have a partner in spirit, and I'm counting not on me for results, but the divine for results. And the divine says, if you seek beauty and you seek to beautify the world, I'll either give you what you're seeking or something better. Right? So we know that if we set off to beautify the world, we change our lives, and we fail in that. The divine takes that from us, or we fail in that, not because we're being punished, but because we're being led to something more beautiful. And if we can say, I tried to do this thing, I tried to change it, and it didn't work, and that's really upsetting me, because despite the fact that I failed, my heart still longs for this. It still calls me to find and replace this thing that was missing, or to change this thing that doesn't belong, or to change the direction we're going in so these catastrophes or these pains or these difficulties don't strike. My heart still longs for me to be a part of that change and be a part of that difference that I long to see. So what can I do? I'm going to do it. Help! And forming that alliance. So I notice we're coming near the end of our hour here. And
thank you, AR, for a wonderful teaching.